Do we have time to die?
We have time to kill, so let's just talk about this new James Bond movie, possibly the last one we're going to get for quite a while, I would
I hope
say.
so.
I know there's all this talk about who or what or how is the next Bond going to be, and I think that based on this weekend's abysmal domestic take, they're going to have a lot of time to figure that out.
Are they saying it's abysmal? Because I mean, it's
Well, I'm saying it's abysmal. 56 million over the weekend. Okay. Never in the history of the box office, I don't think, has the Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day
interrupted.
Monday ever been a factor. But now they're like, no, over the 4-day weekend or whatever, the 3-day weekend, it actually made $60 million. I'm like, yeah.
Okay.
But Venom, Let There Be Carnage debuted with $90 million last weekend.
Crazy.
Now, 8 days ago, the headlines were all like, Bond is set to smash box office records because it opened internationally like 2 weeks ago. And, people went to see it, but then I think they kind of stopped. So this thing, according to, pandemic stuff and advertising, and, it's been on the shelf for 2 years, they're saying that the overall cost of this thing is they need to make close to $1 billion to break even. But I don't see that happening, unless you're talking about home video rentals into like the next century.
Yeah, and the home video rentals are just not as prevalent as they used to be.
Yeah. And it's, we're starting off talking about a James Bond movie without really talking about it. I think part of that is because we are talking about it. You saw it like a couple weeks ago, and I saw it, almost a week ago. So a lot has happened since then. It's come out. People have reacted to it. They've kind of spoken with their wallets. But for me, the kind of like where could this be going is sort of key to this movie, because this is, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about this whole film.
Oh yeah,
it's a definitive end to the Daniel Craig James Bond. In a way we've never seen before in these movies,
which is a good thing.
I disagree. I think it's a good thing for this Daniel Craig arc, but but we were talking before we officially started about the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and I feel at the end of James Bond the way I felt at the end of Star Wars, which is The Force Awakens, which was the Casino Royale of the sequel trilogy. Start off, really strong, really entertaining. Like, here's our thesis statement. We're going places, a little bit familiar, but also some new things thrown in, a lot of ideas and possibilities. 5 movies after Casino Royale, I got a little misty-eyed, at Craig's demise, but overall, I thought the 5 movies he was in were so disjointed, and it was obvious that for various reasons, from creative vision to a writer's strike to all this other stuff, there was no grand plan for this encapsulated 5-movie arc. And there really should have been, because if you step back and look at it all, it's just a giant mess. Whereas I think if you had like a Kevin Feige steering this, like, okay, here's what we're going to do across all 5 movies, it could have been a masterpiece. But it just ended up like a lot of half-baked, unexplored ideas, and reintroducing stuff that didn't need to be reintroduced, and destroying stuff that didn't need to be destroyed, especially after having only introduced them like a movie ago.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Spectre was not good.
Here's the thing. I remember liking Spectre because I hated Quantum of Solace with a fiery passion.
I liked it.
I think I wrote my review is called The 22 Problems with Bond 22. But then I'm also probably one of the only people on the planet who thought, Skyfall was terrible. And so mostly because it had that Dark Knight problem, which was, it wanted to be that, James Bond does the Dark Knight thing. And then Spectre, because I didn't have a deep history of the Bond movies, I was like, okay, I'm familiar with Spectre. I'm familiar with Blofeld. I like Christoph Waltz. I thought it was more spy movie-esque and a little less dour than the other 2 entries. But I remember nothing about it. I only watched it once, and along with the rest of the films in this 5-movie thing, I've watched Casino Royale probably 12, 13 times in the 15 years it's been out. I've never revisited any other movies. and I probably won't watch No Time to Die again.
Yeah, I mean, I will probably revisit all of them. I think Daniel Craig has been a great Bond. Maybe not all of the material that he's been given has been great, but
Exactly.
he's
Yeah.
always been good. Yeah, I agree with you. Casino Royale is highly rewatchable. And yeah, I mean, I liked Skyfall a great deal. Mainly probably because of Deacon's cinematography and for what they were kind of doing stylistically. This movie, out of all the Daniel Craig Bonds, probably has the worst antagonist. Rami Malek's, I don't even remember the dude's name.
Safin.
Safin.
Oh, it's
Lucifer Safin or something.
Lucifer, Lutsif. Subtle, very subtle.
Yeah. As I was watching this, I was thinking, very fascinating opening, very interesting. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right. Not like a typical Bond opening, and honestly, most of the Daniel Craig Bonds, except for maybe Spectre, haven't had a whole lot of typical attached to them. As far as typical for a Bond. I mean, typical for a Bond would be opening up with an action sequence and a quick action sequence, and then going into the opening credits with the Bond song for that movie. Okay, and then getting started with the current. And usually that opening has nothing to do with the plot for the meat of the movie, or the movie that we're going to be watching. It's just showing you, another adventure. It's like if you open up a Spider-Man movie with him capturing Rhino, and then the rest of the movie is him going up against Vulture or something like that. So it just shows the character in action against somebody and then moving on. And this one, it's interesting because it opens up with essentially a flashback sequence, not for Bond, but for his love, Madeline Swan, played by Leah Seydoux. And it's a flashback from when she was a child. It ties the antagonist in to her background. Now, what I thought would have been really cool as I was watching this, and that's never a good sign to sit here and think about how you're trying to, rewrite the movie. But it would have been cool if, like, maybe they were brother and sister torn apart and related or something, some kind of greater connection. Because there's really nothing for the audience to connect with the villain. And you may think, oh, well, why should I be connected with the villain? Well, why not? I mean, you should be able to connect with the villain somehow, whether if he's straight up evil, you should be able to like latch onto that, or you should be able to connect with him as, a more fully developed human being. Or even if he was more broadly stroked and stereotyped, that would have been interesting. But here, it's just, there's one point where like he says that cheesy line, I think you and I are a lot alike. It's like, stop. How many times have we heard that in a monologue? Come on. Yeah.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that the Bond folks had kind of painted themselves into a corner with Spectre, and that if they were going to have Safin and Madeline related somehow, that would have hewn a little bit too closely to the revelation in the last film that Blofeld and James Bond are actually like step brothers or some nonsense. So yeah, it's wise that you're right. I think they should have spent their bullets on this movie if they're going to do the interconnected people. But the other thing that's weird, and someone else, I was listening to another analysis of this a couple of days ago. They pointed out, and it didn't occur to me watching the movie, but now that I noticed, I can't let it go. The opening scene, Madeline is like 7. She's not 10 years old. I mean, she's a little kid.
Yeah, she's 7 maybe.
And her father is Mr. White, who turns out was like the Spectre, an arm of the Spectre tentacle. And he was off, doing dastardly deeds, leaving his daughter and his wife at home in this remote, icy cabin on a pond. and that's when Safin shows up wearing that weird mask and kills the mom and goes hunting for the daughter. Years later, Madeline ends up becoming or meeting Safin there as adults.
Right.
Problem is, Rami Malek is 40 years old. Léa Seydoux is 35.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, they don't do anything to say, oh, here's this old man in present day who would be like, because it's never really clear how much time has passed between Mr. White assassinating Safin's family, which is, he basically on Spector's orders, on Blofeld's orders, wipes out Safin's family for whatever reason. Safin is the only one to survive, but he's horribly scarred by the poison apparently that Mr. White used. But it's not mentioned like, okay, by the time Safin becomes an assassin and goes after young Madeline Swan, has that been 5 years, 20?
15?
Right. Because he's very clearly an adult, but because of like the makeup and the scarring, you can't tell how old he's supposed to be. He could be 20 years old.
It seems like when they mention, like when they show like former, like a past photographs of Safin's family, it seems like, oh, this was the only surviving member. And it was, of course, Safin, and he could have been like a preteen or a teen. So maybe
I couldn't tell. I wasn't paying that close attention. I assumed because there are some little children in the photo, and I just thought that it was one of the little kids.
Yeah.
But and the photo also looked older, the style. It didn't look like it was something from the 90s or even the late 80s. So it could have been early 80s or 70s. But these are the kinds of things. There's so many of these little problems that I kept getting hung up on watching this 2 hour and 43-minute movie, that unlike Casino Royale, where you launch into it and everything feels very like we are able to pick up on things along with the protagonist and kind of figure out the mystery. There's twists and turns, but there aren't certain things where I'm sitting there thinking, wait a second, what was that about?
Right.
But that's all over this movie.
Kind of. Yeah. I did like the official, the story opening after the main credits. I'll say this right out of the gate is I wasn't a huge fan of the Billie Eilish song. It was very unmemorable.
This is the first song I've heard of Billie Eilish.
Okay.
And honestly, it sounds terrible, but I've avoided listening to her music because she's everywhere, and I have no problem like with popular artists, but every time I see her, like her thing is looking mopey and depressed. I'm like, it's kind of like once you get past the Fiona Apple, Alanis Morissette thing, like, yes, you're this generation's like put upon millionaire teenager. I get it. And you're so sad. But I liked the theme song after like the first minute because it took me that long to figure out what the hell she was saying. It was like this mumbling, I'm so sad and it's tragic. But yeah, I thought it was an all right song.
I'll say this. The first time I heard it was like 2 years ago when they released it, more than that maybe. And I thought even then it's probably a bad thing. Okay, so I didn't like it then, but then when I watched it in this movie, I realized it's probably a bad thing for them to release a song so early before a movie's out, because watching and listening to it in context of the opening credits, I liked it there and then. Outside of the movie, I don't like it. I'm not a big fan, and that's not good because some of the best Bond songs are very highly re-listenable.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the 2 years ago thing, I would imagine they probably released it because they're like, yeah, this movie's come out in April.
Oh yeah, and it didn't.
Whoops.
So did COVID.
But it's already out there. Yes. But I mean, again, like go back to Casino Royale. I am a huge fan of "You Know My Name," the Chris Cornell song.
Yeah.
I mean, I've listened to that song. Like sometimes I've just felt like I need that kind of heroic pump up song, and that song makes you feel like you are James Bond.
Totally. And it's crazy. I was thinking about that recently, and I was like, it's crazy that it does make you feel that way, because at no point is there ever a hint of the James Bond theme in it.
There is, yeah. When it opens up, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, yeah, that's right. Dun-dun, dun-dun. Yeah, okay. Anyway, but I remember more so the whole like melody of the Chris Cornell song that I do like, the classic James Bond theme. So that's a testament of a good song. Um, you know, so anyways, it's better in context. And then, the movie, it opens up with, James Bond has retired apparently again, always,
like this is the third time in like the last three movies. It's and that's the other thing. Like, sorry, but you've got these five films. The first two are directly connected because Quantum begins like minutes after Casino Royale, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Casino Royale was Bond's first like outing, really,
supposedly,
as the 00, right?
Yeah.
And then the next film, you've got all of this talk about Bond is over the hill.
He's too old.
He's too old. So we've ostensibly missed years of missions. It's kind of like in the dark, going back to the Dark Knight trilogy. At the end of the Dark Knight, Batman is like, I've got to run because I need to be hunted because that's what the city needs right now.
And then Dark Knight Rises.
He's like, I've been retired. No one's seen Batman for like 6 years. I'm like, what?
He's walking around with a cane and.
Yeah. So it's like, no, show me those adventures.
I guess story-wise, it can be kind of compelling to, and interesting, but it's like you feel so like you're missing out on everything.
Yeah, because I think Casino Royale is such a great opening of a Bond origin story that you either do that and like follow it through and maybe have him retire in the last picture if they planned it out for 5 films, but otherwise don't do that, because just have Bond be like these standalone adventures, like we were talking about What If, just leave them kind of standalone things. Maybe you've got a reference to a character, a reference to something that happened in another movie, but it's not important.
And honestly, before the Craig movies, James Bond was pretty much a standalone. It was an anthology, basically, that adhered to certain tropes. And as you know, tropes can be fine and tropes can be good as long as they're, done well. And you come to expect certain things with a Bond movie. I remember when Quantum of Solace came out and Roger Ebert's review was like, this is not James Bond. Where's this? Where's that? And I didn't mind that because, like you said, it was taking place minutes after Casino Royale. And I actually think that there were some really cool, set pieces and production design and good cast in Quantum of Solace. But again, Quantum of Solace really established that we're not doing what you're used to with Bond. This isn't just, you can't just watch this movie and have it be your first Bond and understand how Bond movies are. It doesn't have the gadgets, the women, the intro, all this stuff. Fine. And I didn't mind that. But I think it got to a certain point where I think with Spectre, where I was just like, I was really underwhelmed with Christoph Waltz Blofeld, both his performance and the way he was written. I'm kind of with you where I don't remember a whole lot from Spectre, and that's probably because it was unmemorable. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'll watch it again just to see that Dave Bautista fight. I don't know. I'll probably check it out again, but the biggest problem I had with Spectre carried into this movie, No Time to Die. I was not invested, or I did not believe in the chemistry or romance between, what's her name, Swan and Bond.
Yeah,
and Léa Seydoux.
That takes some doing, because I'm a big fan of Léa Seydoux.
I think she's great. They're really trying to sell to us that this is the biggest romance Bond has ever had, next to
Vesper Lynd. Yeah.
Well,
aside from Vesper.
Yeah. But as far as if you're looking at all the Bond movies, like there was Diana Rigg's character in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that was a really close relationship that they had, and that really broke him. So as an update, they kind of, in the Craig movies, they kind of made that relationship Vesper Lynd, Eva Green, and again, Casino Royale being the best Craig Bond movie. I don't know any other love interest or woman in the other Bond movies had a hard time living up to Eva Green's Vesper Lynn because she was just so good and so well written. But this character that was introduced in Spectre, I'm sorry. I mean, Bond is kind of like an older brother or even her dad. You know, I don't get it. I don't get the chemistry. I don't get why she's the one for Bond. What she sees in him, you know, and I wouldn't have mind being given some time for me to be on board with it, but there's really no time. There's really no time for these two.
There's no time for love.
There's no time for love. Plenty of time to die. There's no time to build that. You know, what did they see in each other? Didn't see it the last movie. Don't see it in this movie. I wasn't sold. So there's that handicap, honestly, to this movie, along with the weak antagonist. And that's those two key things you have to have kind of like in a Bond movies. You got to have a really good antagonist. You got to have, if you're going to have a love interest, you know, make it a good one. You can have all the action sequences you want and all the great cinematography and great locations, but come on, those two key things are huge.
Yeah. And I feel like they did there was a lot of business in this movie, a lot of, you know, not missions, but almost like playing a video game. You've got different levels of things going on to cover up for the fact that they had no central villain, really. I mean, when you step back at it, and this isn't something I really realized again until I heard other people talk about what happened in this film, because I walked out of No Time to Die thinking, okay, James Bond is dead. You know, along with pretty much everybody else from the franchise, except for M, all of Spectre, Felix Leiter. You know, it's like Money, Penny, Q, and M. So the alphabet people are still, you know, hanging out, you know, drinking scotch and like reading quotations about life and death, which is, you know, that's fine. But I'm like, what actually was this movie about? And so Safin wanting revenge on Spectre because Spectre, at the behest of Blofeld, killed his family. And so he arranges a party in Cuba where all of this, all of the Spectre agents are at this party.
Apparently. Probably not a good thing. Didn't somebody like look at, why are we all invited? This seems like a trap.
Well, on top of that, because they drove this home, they kept, because I was thinking that's not all of Spectre, but they're like, no, all of Spectre was right. It's not all of Spectre was there. Down to like field age, like you're telling me they didn't have like maintenance people Spectre who weren't invited. Janitor, yes. Instead of the inspector general, it's the Spectre janitor. But it just like for this big international operation that probably goes back decades and has tentacles in everything.
Right.
Like, what was it? What was the operation that was like the pre-Spectre in this? I think it was in Quantum of Solace where they went to the opera or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, like whoever was running those people, like they were all at the party too.
They were there.
Yeah. And so, but okay, it's Blofeld's birthday, and there's a weird butler carrying around a tray with an eyeball that's like looking at everybody. There's a kidnapped Russian scientist who switches out the DNA of James Bond so that everyone else will get killed except him for this bioweapon. Okay, Safin destroys Spectre. And then he wants to do something with this super weapon that he has. The Russian scientist at one point does the most boneheaded, stupid thing, which is when he's carting, you know, being led around by the new 007, Lashana Lynch. We'll get to her in a second. He says, yes, this I've encoded this to be able to target, you know, specific DNA. We could wipe out entire undesirable races of people. And she's like, excuse me, and like throws him overboard into the acid. I'm like, you might be thinking that, but you keep that inside, Doctor. You've
all
almost
you need to
been
say
killed
is like,
5
you
times.
people.
What do you mean, you people?
Oh.
You know, there was a lot of press before this movie came out, and some of that press might have carried over into the questionable box office. Is, you know, No Time to Die going to be woke? I think a lot of it had to do with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's involvement. And there was some fingerprints of that throughout the movie, but it was not nearly as obnoxious as I thought it would be. But Lashana Lynch's 007, a big deal was made about her. Is she going to be the next Bond? Because she is 007. We have our first black female 007. Because as with everything, James Bond is not 007. 007 is a mantle. It could be anybody.
But people don't realize that.
Right. But that's because very specifically, it's always been James Bond 007. Right. It's not come up. But now they've got this opportunity. Oh, it's just a mantle. James could actually be a girl's name. It can be, but any way in. But no, here's my problem with Lashana Lynch's Nomi character. I have no problem with the idea of there being someone to step in after Bond is gone off.
Makes sense.
My God, all these splinter ideas. I do have a problem with the idea that James Bond can go off the grid, because there's no way that MI6 would allow him to do that, especially because in Casino Royale, I know he was injected with that thing, that tracker or whatever it was. It's not going to be something that dissolves and like, oh, this is only a temporary thing. They've got him bugged.
Yeah.
But okay, let's say he retires or goes off the grid and M was like, we never knew if you were coming back, so we gave your jersey to somebody else. I don't know how long she's been on the job, but I don't understand the antagonism. She is right off the bat just unpleasant, unhelpful, combative, and she's like a rival to him, as opposed to understanding, apparently, because I don't know how long he's been on the mission, but he's like the legendary James Bond. He's disappeared and now he's back to like save the world. And she's like, loser. And like the entire movie, he's like cleaning up after her because she goes on her own mission, to like kidnap the Russian scientists, and Bond gets there first and all this other stuff. And then she get like her big moment of heroism is taking Madeline and their daughter, spoiler, away to an island and like hang out on this island while James Bond gets blown up on another island. He's like, if you're going to introduce a new cool 007, that was Ana de Armas's character, who was in the movie for all of 10 minutes. Now, talk about wasted potential. In the beginning, after this whole kerfuffle happens, great. Yeah, she was. But Bond puts Madeline Swan on a train because he, for some reason, thinks that she is part of Spectre and has betrayed him because Vesper Lynd's grave gets blown up and there's a Spectre calling card, left Wile E. Coyote style at the crime scene.
In Italy, yeah.
In Italy. Bond, like after escaping death with Madeline, puts her on a train and says, "You'll never see me again." Naive Ian, watching this in the cinema, thought, thank God she's out of the franchise.
No, you didn't think that.
I did, but I was also half awake. So when she showed up again, I was like, oh, that's right. I forgot. I'm a film critic. But I was thinking how cool it would be for James Bond to meet Ana de Armas's character, who's a newer agent, we're led to believe.
Like CIA, right? Yeah.
I don't know if she's CIA or if she's working with them, because she's almost like she's been contracted by the CIA via Felix and his totally not at all suspicious new partner to be part of this Cuba mission.
Yeah.
So I don't know if she's like a liaison there or what, but but they show up, they go to this party, they're dressed to the nines, they're bantering, they're drinking, she's kind of nervous and all this stuff, but that could very well be an act. And then all hell breaks loose. And I'm like, finally, after like half a decade or a decade or more, I'm watching what feels like an actual James Bond movie. It's fun, it's dangerous, it's cool. And then she disappears from the movie. How great would it have been if he recognized in her that spark of life, because she is very Vesper Lynd in the way she carries herself. She's kind of unconfident, but again, I get the feeling if we'd spent more time with her, because there was that crack where he's like, you've only been on the job 3 weeks, because this is after she's done like a somersault in the high heels, landed in perfect form, and then shot 3 guys while doing this like breakdancing backspin on the floor, shooting people in the gut. And she's like, more or less 3 weeks.
She was great. I mean, she was great. And she really just kind of livened up the story.
And then we go back to this.
And she's gone.
Yeah. And with her goes, the glimmer of joy, because it's all back to dour James Bond, and then Felix dies on a boat, and
terrible
Carter Ash gets I liked Felix's death scene. I just hated the way that they went about it, because it's so dumb. But Jeffrey Wright is a great actor, and Daniel Craig is a great actor, so you get them together, one of them is dying, it's going to be moving.
Yeah. Yeah. And it even then at that point, it just felt like it feels like we have a whole lot more movie to go through. And okay.
Go through. I think that's a perfect way
to go through, to endure. Look, I really like the cinematography here. I think, I think it's Linus Sandgren, who also did the last couple Damien Chappelle movies.
Damien
Chappelle. I'm thinking of the current controversy with Dave Chappelle. Maybe they should just merge. I could Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle's La La Land.
That'd be great, man. What is this La La Land?
Stop right there.
Yeah, and so there's some great scenes and some great locations and everything. I just felt like, and honestly, like even the stuff just in Italy with Craig, there's some really.
Oh, hold on a second. Your audio dropped out. Right. Hold on. Time out. Your audio died.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right.
Yes. Okay. So in Italy.
Yeah. So even the stuff in Italy, I felt like you were getting like a complete range of Craig almost at his best, with as far as like emotional, physical, really delivering some great stuff.
I'm going to take it back to Casino Royale. That opening scene.
Oh, yeah.
I felt, now I know there's probably a great deal of stunt work there, but the way that they filmed it, I believe that Daniel Craig was like busting through walls and climbing up and up this, massive construction. In this movie, they stray into like Mission Impossible sequel territory where he's on a motorcycle and he's driving and he jumps it up over like 3 levels of this elevated highway or road. I'm like, no, there's no nitrous F9, booster pack on this little motorcycle.
Or when he does the Spider-Man thing on the bridge, and
that's it. I appreciate that there's a big action sequence. But for me, the highlight of that is the thing that was in all the new trailers where he and Madeline are in the car, the Aston Martin, with the machine guns, and everyone's like firing at them. And he's like, okay. And then he starts spinning around and shooting people, because that looks like something that I could actually buy.
Yeah. And I buy it too. And I think that it is wildly impossible for a person and for vehicles to do all that. But I mean, at this point, with all the movies that we've seen, from the Bonds to the Bourne Identities to the Mission Impossibles, I'm kind of expect that. But I guess what I really liked, even in that scene in the car, is there's something simmering underneath it all with Craig. And I like that he was just sitting there doing nothing in the car. And she's freaking out because their car is getting hailed with bullets. It's a bulletproof car. And he's just sitting there stewing and thinking. And I like that, and it's cool to see. I wish they would have taken more moments like that to develop their romance, but okay. But yeah, I like that, because then you realize, what condition he's in during that scene. It provides us with context, emotional context, and I just don't think that we get enough of that in these movies, or at least in the previous Bond movies, really. But I think we get a lot more of that in the Craig Bond movies. In fact, everybody's doing their kind of Craig retrospect, summarizing how he's been as a Bond now that he's done with Bond. And a lot of them are saying, yes, he's been the most kind of like bullish and physical Bond, but he's also been the most kind of openly emotional, which is probably true. And, I think Craig's been really good at that, and in this movie especially, unfortunately they gave him certain tropes to, be emotional about, like, oh, I have a daughter, oh, yeah, this and that, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna die. I just wish that more of those things were, I wish it was just a coincidence that she had his eyes and that she wasn't his daughter. That would have been interesting. But I don't know. The whole thing at the end just feels um like they're hitting us over the head with these kind of manipulative emotional points, but also, like, wait, the evil villain has a secret island lair. Okay.
Well, it's just like how the Emperor has a secret planet where he's building, thousands of Death Stars or Star Destroyers underneath the surface of the planet, which when they all rise up, does totally not destroy the entire planet. But anyway,
try and make that figure that out.
but no, and this is the thing is like it's like they want to call back to some of the legacy Bond stuff. Like, it's very Doctor No with the weird guy in the gray, kind of suit with, wearing a mask and the island and all that stuff. But that doesn't quite work in this more realistic era that they're trying to put Bond into. So it's all very confused. On top of that, I call it a virus earlier, but what this really is nanobots.
Yeah.
These little micro bugs that once they are injected into your system, they key into your DNA, and then you essentially become the agent of someone else's doom. So Bond gets injected by Safin with the stuff that's coded to Madeline, and by, I guess, inference, their daughter. So now here's the thing. In a better movie, I think that's a really lovely note to help Bond make his choice because he could have gotten off that island. There's some way that, he's James Bond. He could have figured something out. But when he realized that even if he did survive, he'd never be able to touch his, the love of his life, so-called, and his, actual daughter, he's like, well, I don't have anything to live for anymore. So I might as well do this. But my question is, let's get back to the gadgets. We have very few of them in this movie, but one of them is an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. Q very clearly says, you press this. I don't know if he said you can only use it once, but
isn't it in a watch or no?
Yeah, I think so. But it's very much, it feels like a one and done thing. Like, this is your nuclear option, because what this will do, as people know from EMPs from thousands of other movies, it sends out this pulse that knocks out anything electronic. Comes in very handy when he's fighting a henchman named Cyclops. I think it's a guy with a
nickname, at least.
Right, but it's a guy that has one regular eye and another is like this mechanical cybernetic eye that can do stuff. He's a very formidable foe. They end up in this struggle in a staircase, not nearly as cool as the one from Casino Royale, I might mention. But the headlock, watch, press the EMP. He does some bad Schwarzenegger pun, like, you're gonna have a big headache or some nonsense, and it short circuits the guy's eyeball, and as it would, because it knocks it out, anything electrical. Immediately, James Bond's earpiece cracks in, like, James, you've only got 9 minutes to get out of there. Hold on. I don't know much about science, but I do know that radio transmitters work via the principle of electricity.
Well, yeah, Q made it so that wouldn't happen.
Sure. Did Safin also design nanobots that are also not electrical? Maybe they run on nuclear power or something. But if we're told that you don't want to use this thing unless you have to, because it's going to knock out anything that's electrical within a certain radius, what he meant to say is, use this watch if you find yourself in a specific case of having to fight a Cyclops with a cybernetic eyeball.
Yeah. It's I think that was just for visual effect, and it didn't make sense. I mean, he could have used that on the island.
Ooh, would that have
You
I don't
know,
know what the range on this thing is, but could he have used it to knock out those missiles that were coming his way?
I mean, they run off electronics, right?
James Bond,
Um,
the James Bond I know, and again, we have a very tentative relationship, would have used that some way to like call Q to say, okay, how do I take the harness this EMP to a satellite beacon to like blast the EMP rays out towards these missiles that are coming at my head? And we'd be like, oh, you do this and this and this, and like, pew, and they all fall into the ocean. And he's like, I love you. And because these nanobots are now disabled because of this EMP, I can be with my family. And it's a happy Bond ending instead of this weird cop out.
let's go back for a moment and talk more about that. Uh, the whole concept of getting kind of like infected with this poison and everything.
Mhm.
So, and I think we have to do that by talking about Blofeld's death in this movie.
Yeah.
So apparently, so correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently only Bond could go in and talk to Blofeld in the security prison and everything. And it's like going to get your a security box at a bank or something. It's like,
Yeah.
he comes out in this little vault thing and a circular thing, and yeah. But so before he goes in, Bond, doesn't he like embrace Swan?
He tries to shake her hand because
Yeah.
they're putting up this whole ruse of like, oh, we don't really know each other, and he extends his hand and she like kind of ices him, and
but
Lashana Lynch is like, oh, that's cold, because
but she had put something on her hand, right?
Did she put something? Oh yeah, because that's the I guess it doesn't was that the nanobots? And are we to believe that that's the stuff that she had to put on to go do her thing? Yeah,
I guess so, because I think that originally she was supposed to be the one to go talk to Blofeld, and Bond went in with her. And then when she realized that she couldn't go through with it, meaning like kill Blofeld, she was like, I need to get out of here. I can't do this, because she was saying that it was seeing him was psychologically, affecting her. So he's like, all right, well, take her out, I'll stay. And so somehow, whatever, an embrace or whatever, that stuff that she put on herself was transmitted over to him,
because he grabbed her at one point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got close to Blofeld, somehow grabbing him or whatever. And, because of that, Blofeld died. But I'm sorry, if did they, it seems like the rest of the movie after that forgot that like this stuff is still on Bond, isn't it? And isn't he, contagious?
Well, but that's the thing, is it was programmed, we're led to believe, to kill Blofeld specifically. Now
with the DNA, the nanobots.
Yes. Now, because I don't remember much about Spectre, I don't remember exactly how Bond and Blofeld are related. They were like stepbrothers, but was it an adoption situation or like a weird parentage? Because it did occur to me that like, could that whatever he was infected with is going to kill Blofeld, does it have part of Bond's DNA in there, or does it have to be like so precise that they can say, no, this is only going to kill this one guy?
I imagine it's pretty precise, but as far as the relationship between the connection between Blofeld and Bond, I mean, I think that was really only established in Spectre, and it was again unforgettable. So it wasn't even a thing in any of the other Bond movies.
Right, and the thing is, I don't mind that Blofeld died in this movie. I kind of liked, that the brief moment that they had together in the prison, that kind of like little playing with each other,
Joker Batman thing, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, I was gonna say something else about that, and I totally just lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me. But
you like that moment.
I did. But partially is because of I like the makeup on Christoph Waltz, like the one missing eye and the scar. I thought it was a nice way to update the makeup on that character, because he's always kind of had that little right. But shoot, I had a point and I was gonna.
You'll get it.
Yeah. Oh, but I guess okay. So nanobots are so small that you don't have to have them injected. You can just like wipe them on they get in through your pores or something. And
I guess.
I have no
I
idea.
guess it is kind of interesting how, yes, this movie was written like, long before COVID, but for something to be, transmitted and to be a threat and to, yes, this is a lot more of a targeted by a weapon. But yeah, it is interesting that here's a movie that was anticipated and delayed by COVID, and yet there's these, kind of, I don't know, touches that kind of relate somewhat to what we have experienced in the pandemic. It's just like, this is the threat; it could destroy everybody.
Well, and also,
Yeah.
The response to COVID. One of the things that I thought was very interesting that they left in the movie, I was surprised given the environment this is coming out in, is Safin is talking about, people just want to be led and told what to do. And, his idea for targeting this thing is to basically control people, out of fear. And I think that's part of the conversation that's happening, in this country, whether you, believe in that or not. It just seemed like really on the nose and prescient, honestly, for something that was written like 3-4 years ago, probably. And I wonder if people got wind of what this movie was kind of about, which maybe caused some of them to stay away from the movies. I mean,
I don't know.
Venom is escapism. This is more like confrontism. I do remember what I was going to say.
All right. See, I told you.
Yes, thank you. It was this is the second movie in a row that we've talked about where you've got one person going to visit someone else in a prison cell, a highly dangerous individual kept under lock and key, who is able to grab that person, and then there's a struggle in the cell, and then something is transmitted between them. In Venom 2, it's the symbiote. And in this
I haven't seen it. Don't break it for me.
Oh, you didn't see it yet. I forgot about that. Oh, I gotta give you crap, sir. Elliot stayed for the live stream last week.
Did he really?
He did. You should go back and watch it.
He was nothing better to do. That's what the deal is.
Well, I'm just saying, for someone who hadn't seen the movie, he got a lot of it right, surprisingly. Which I don't know what that says about Venom 2.
I had a screener to watch. Okay, so
no, but I mean, you're not missing anything. But if and when you get around to watching Venom 2, and I'm not saying rush out and see it, you will recognize a very key scene from this No Time to Die.
Basically, what you're saying is poor security in prisons. Yeah,
very poor.
Yeah.
Ungodly so.
So did you stay till the very, 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 very end where it says James Bond will return?
No, because I'd heard about it.
Yeah.
And that's all. Was there any other stuff at the end, or was it just that? Okay.
That's it.
So I guess, I mean, we've kind of talked about most of what happens in this movie, at least the broad strokes. It is kind of a mess, but I guess my question gets back to you to kind of close this out, sort of where we started. Where do you see Bond going through? Where would you want to see Bond go from here? And how much of a time do you want between reboots?
Well, the fact that it says those 4 words, James Bond will return, it left me with a how and why. If, even though this wasn't Craig's best Bond, even though it wasn't the best Bond movie overall, I'd be fine if we never saw another James Bond movie after this movie.
Never saw one?
No.
25 and done.
Yeah. And that would be cool. You just kill off the character and we're done. Now, if they were to say 007 will return, that would be interesting. Not that it has to be her, could be anybody. I like the fact that she's 007 in this movie, just because, yes, anybody can wear a number, anybody can be a number, anybody can wear a jersey, whatever. Where they go, I don't know. I am in the minority of many opinions where I believe that James Bond should be a heterosexual white male from England. I don't care if he's played by an American. I don't care. I mean, he's been played by a Welsh guy, an Irish guy, a Scottish guy, but he is written by Ian Fleming as that character, as that type of person, as heterosexual, white, middle-aged guy.
You're almost whispering.
Am I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so much.
I think it should be a heterosexual white male.
I know, right? But not. I think maybe it wasn't middle age. It was maybe like mid 30s. I think was Bond the way he was written. But
and Craig was like 35, between 35 and 38, I think, when he started.
Yeah. He's 53 now. But and look, I don't like. You're racist. Why should he? Why can't he be played by a black guy? Why can't that? Why can't he be whatever? I'm like, look, I'm going back to the source material. And look, I could say that, hey, Michael Clark Duncan played a pretty good Kingpin. I enjoyed that, and I'm all for that. But I think because it's Bond and we have all these movies, and because it's been like over so many decades, I just feel like that's one of the things that makes the Bond franchise Bond. At the central heart of it is, here's this guy who is, a heterosexual white male, and that's, again, the way he was written, and that's how Ian Fleming wrote all those books. So there's a reason. The source material. Yeah, you could also say, well, Stan Lee and those guys wrote, Wilson Fisk as a, big fat white guy, rich fat cat. Okay, fine, but he's also not as recognizable as James Bond. So I think there's a little bit more room to, be a little bit more flexible with how he's portrayed. I don't know. That's my unpopular opinion. I haven't shared that in a whole lot of places, but.
Well, I mean, I'm fine just watching it get canceled, No, I'm no, here's the thing. I don't
watching me get canceled. Is that what you said?
Yeah. I'll be waving to you out from the shore as the missiles come down on your head. No, but here's the thing. I share your sentiment, and I think that's a minority opinion, no pun intended, in critical and media circles. But I think if you were to, I don't know that it's a broader, I don't think it's a broader sentiment to say that all of this kind of like woke talk of like, it's time for a female James Bond or a black James Bond. I mean, those are all interesting ideas. And I think that, 10 years ago when people were talking about, because Daniel Craig, it should be remembered, wasn't always, no matter what he says right now in his kind of tearful goodbyes to the franchise, there was like the last couple movies, I feel like there was all this press about how he's tired of doing it and he doesn't want to do it anymore, until the Broccoli's backed up this big money truck to his mansion and said, well, what about this? So there was speculation of like, could Idris Elba play James Bond? 10 years ago I would have said absolutely,
maybe, sure.
But now I think, because so much about what's going on in popular culture is about deconstruction and subversion and representation, but not representation in terms of new properties, but taking existing properties and saying, well, what if this character who's been, a white person, it's a meme that like all these redheaded characters in comics, when they're adapted to like TV shows and movies, are now being turned into black people. And, it's just kind of a weird time to be in, because it feels like, instead of something organic, it feels like people in a corporate boardroom saying, well, if we make this change, we're going to seem really sensitive and, woke and progressive, and we're going to move things forward. I'm like, no, it just, all you're doing is tokenizing characters. And I don't think that the target audience you're trying to appeal to, is even going to really go or care. But, the demographics that you're trying to appease may even feel talked down to. Daniel Craig initially, I think it was a couple of years ago when someone asked him about, Bond and could it be someone else? I think he had made some kind of a remark about like, oh yeah, sure, James Bond could be anybody. But in the recent press for No Time to Die, now that it was actually coming out, he said, no, I think the key is James Bond should be who he is. But in terms of like female characters, it shouldn't be a woman. We just need better parts for, female actresses.
Agreed. And when people say, oh, well, we need a black James Bond, we need a female James Bond, I agree. But there needs to be something added to that. We need a black James Bond character. We need a black character like James Bond. We need we need a female character like James Bond. Give them their own franchise. I get it. Gosh, like when Angelina Jolie's kind of underappreciated movie, but it got pretty decent reviews when that movie Salt came out. Good character, fascinating. That could have gotten a franchise. Didn't. It flopped kind of with audiences, but I remember Ebert gave it 4 stars. I liked it. I don't know. That was Evelyn Salt. Great character for a franchise. I mean, great name. And she was good in it, but that didn't take. The new Tomb Raider with Alicia Vikander. Supposedly getting another movie, but we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I think even Idris Elba's popularity, I mean, he's done well with the Luther series, but has he really ever carried a movie? I mean, I don't know.
He's tried, but I mean, even again in
Dark Tower,
but that was another case of race swapping. I mean,
yeah.
In fairness, I don't know if I haven't read all the Dark Tower books. I don't know if King ever spelled out, yes, it's a 6 foot tall white guy in a duster. Right. But I think if you had asked people reading the Dark Tower 30 years ago, like, is this a black guy? Like, no, it's like a traditional like Western story.
Right.
It's but so I understand the desire for representation.
Sure.
But I don't understand this kind of hijacking. I do understand it because, as we've mentioned, there have been stop and start potential franchises that have just never gone anywhere. So the surefire way to get that representation is to say, here's $1 billion franchise that everybody knows. So we're going to make the lead, black, because that's going to mean something. That's going to be the thing that opens the gates so we can have all these other movies and all that other stuff. But I don't think that's the answer. I think Tyler Perry, who's got more money than God, he should have the people who wrote Casino Royale write an amazing black female, or maybe it's a partnership James Bond global world-class spy thriller that costs $100 million. Tyler Perry could find that in his sofa cushions and just say, I'm going to greenlight 6 of these movies. I'm going to put them out. Even if they flop, we're going to establish a new brand that people can latch onto. If he can do that with freaking Medea, he can make a serious movie.
Yeah. I'm down with that.
You don't build culture by hijacking other culture.
And the thing is, what people don't realize, maybe only huge Bond fans do, is that Bond movies have changed. There wasn't always a black Felix Leiter.
No.
There wasn't always, a female that he reported to. And
Judi Dench, I remember that was a big stir back in the 90s.
Yeah, it was a big freaking stir when they cast Craig as a blonde James Bond. So where does it go from here? I think the only place it could go, I don't know. I mean, the fact you're going to kill off James Bond and say James Bond will return, are we talking a real hardcore reboot? Like, are we going back to like, no, you give it at least 5 years, please. And then what? Make it seem like we're in a world where nobody's ever known James Bond, or you're going to build that type of cinema world in the movie where, ladies and gentlemen, this is James Bond. What are you going to do? Show him as a teenager? I don't know.
James Bond Jr. Remember that cartoon show?
I remember. Yeah, I remember. So I don't know.
James Bond is a tricky character to do in the 21st century because we're past the age of like gadgets and, analog computers. But I still think, Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible franchise has proven that you can still do spy thrillers, international globetrotting adventures in this day and age. I think if they reboot James Bond, I welcome a return of James Bond, but I welcome the idea of a movie that's got to be fun and exciting, much like Mission Impossible, not connected to anything else. And I think you just have a new James Bond adventure, no context. It's just, there's this British agent working for MI6. His call sign is 007, and he's trying to save the world. And I think the number of people who are going to go to that, like say this movie comes out in 5 or 10 years, who goes to that and they're like, I don't understand what's happening right now. That's going to be
Good.
like 0.00001% of the number of people going to the movies. The studio should not fear that they're going to tank the box office. Most people who go see that movie are going to be like, oh my God, James Bond is back. And I don't have to have, it's light, it's fun. Again, Mission Impossible is a great blueprint. I haven't seen all the James Bond movies, but they kind of talk about how Nomi, Lashana Lynch's character, she's taken over the 007 mantle. And it briefly, M tries to reinstate Bond. And he's like, well, how many numbers do we have left? And well, obviously it's it's like 1 through 9, or maybe even 0. Is there a 000? But do something. Like, you could have an entire movie just about like what's going on with the other 00 agents.
They did. Yeah. I mean, there was a point where I think Sean Bean's character in GoldenEye was a former, you would think he was like 006 or something.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know. I know you said you haven't watched every James Bond movie, but how familiar are you with On Her Majesty's Secret Service?
I have not seen it.
Okay.
But I met George Lazenby at Comic-Con one year.
Oh, wow. Cool. You met a Bond.
I did.
He seems like a cool guy.
He was nice and very tall, very, very tall.
Yeah. Tall? Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh. So I encourage you to see it at some point.
I want to. Yeah.
Can you? Yeah. So I encourage you to see it at some point. There are calls to that movie in this movie, mainly musical cues. So when we hear Louis Armstrong's we have all the time in the world at the end credits, and when he says we have all the time in the world, and even in the opening in Italy, there's an instrumental version of Louis Armstrong's We Have All the Time in the World. For those who know those references, I felt like it was a little, I know it was pure nostalgic homage, but it just felt like heavy-handed. Yes, we know this is the 25th Bond and Craig's last. We're going to pay these nods. And it didn't, those nods didn't really feel well earned. Just because, that music was for that movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And to kind of incorporate that was just like,
Yeah. I mean, I know like Bond's wife dies at the, in that movie, and I think they're trying to tie that in thematically with this movie. You're right. It's unearned, and, just let it go. Either establish that was somehow part of the Daniel Craig continuity, which it clearly wasn't, or it's like, what are you doing here? It's strictly just fan service. So I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be cool because we've got these parallels with the dead wives and fiancés or whatever? Just no. Invest in something, original, and making new memories. What in a future James Bond film is going to be called back in No Time to Die? Probably nothing.
Nothing.
It's derivative and it's messy.
Yeah, I can't see it. I don't know. At some point, as far as rewatchability, I probably will watch all the Craigs again just to see, not what they're like back to back, but just to see what Craig does. If I watch them, all back to back, kind of what Craig does with the character, because I think he does some really interesting things with the character, and I like him as a Bond. I thought he did a fantastic job, and I guess this is as good as any performance to go out on. I don't know if it's as good as any movie to go out on. But,
agreed. Yeah, and that's one of my like big, not regrets because I didn't do anything, but it makes me sad because, again, going back to Casino Royale, that audacious debut, you're right, he has done the best he possibly could with the material in all 5 movies, but they've all just been, kind of diminishing returns down through the years, and it's unfortunate because I would like to see him much like people have, again, with Star Wars, have said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could redo the sequel trilogy with a grand plan and actually someone knows what they're doing? I'd love to see James Bond reimagined with Daniel Craig, but we're never going to see that.
Well, I always wanted to see a former Bond play a Bond villain, so there's always that. But
there you go.
Yeah, but he's got another franchise to play with Rian Johnson's Knives Out stuff, so we'll see how that goes.
Maybe you will. I I was not.
You will.
I'm gonna have to I'm gonna need some nanobots to get through a Knives Out sequel. I did not like that.
Just totally designed for your DNA too.
Oh God. I just saw, as unrelated to anything, I saw Netflix just bought an Ana de Armas starring NC-17 Marilyn Monroe biopic.
Wow, that's very descriptive.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I saw Scout Tafoya on Twitter, like he linked the story and said something like, even us, old perverts have our time.
Wow. I don't know. It's funny. You think that just not anybody can play Marilyn Monroe. I mean, I think Michelle Williams did a pretty good job. But it's like, I don't know. I mean, I hope it's something unique and not just a run-of-the-mill biopic.
I haven't seen it yet, but if you had told me during the peak of Twilight that Kristen Stewart would be getting Oscar buzz for playing Princess Diana, I would have laughed and thrown up in your face.
Yeah, I don't know about that one either. But I'm open to it. I like Pablo Larraín's movies, so we'll see. And he did a pretty good job with Jackie with Natalie Portman.
Yes, very much so.
Yep.
All right. Well,
enough for that.
Yeah, this conversation is about to die because I'm going to put a bullet right in his. Oh, did you notice this is, I think, the first gun sight opening that didn't have any blood?
I think it is. I'll have to watch. I don't know if I'm sure on YouTube they have all of them lined up.
I was reading somewhere that there's like, that was really jarring for someone who saw it. They're like, wait, where's the
blood?
Yeah.
Can't have it.
No. But there's blood all over the rest of this movie. Like there's some pretty gruesome stuff. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of puns to be made, but we'll make them another time.
He didn't die. He didn't die another die, but I guess he had time to die here.
Oh God. Only the good die young.
Oh.
Well,
live and let die. Oh.
I got nothing. Anyway, thank you for talking. I was going to say Die Another Day, but No Time to Die. Yes, James Bond. And we will return at some point to talk about the next James Bond movie, I'm sure, in 10, 20, 50 years.
Yeah, either that or a movie with a whole lot of sand.
Yes. Well, I don't know if are you going to be able to finish the book in time for that, David?
I'm finishing Kevin Anderson and Frank Herbert's son's graphic novel.
That doesn't quite count.
It's about this thick.
Oh, well, out of curiosity, how many pages did you get into the Dune novel?
I'd really not to share that.
Oh,
I'm probably on like page 50 something. It's really sad.
I was going to say you got halfway through the forward and you're like, no.
No, I got more than that. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll I don't know if we'll be talking about Dune on a show, but we'll definitely talk Dune after a screening.
We will.
Go to attend soon, so I'm excited about that. But thank you very much for hanging out and talking Bond. We'll catch you soon, David.
Adios.